I guess get a verbal yes. Let's see.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, I just covered kind of the intro, so we'll jump through. Um, before we dive into the regs, I just want to do a quick who Kinfolk is. I think everyone on the call, I recognize your name in some form or fashion, so you know who we are. But our mission is to ensure the future of hunting and conservation by growing an inclusive hunting community through mentorship and hands-on education. We are a new 501c3 nonprofit that started last year, so we're really sort of just getting our feet under us. Right now, we operate we run events from Albany down to through Long Island. So kind of everything through the Hudson Valley around New York City. We are serving by choice adult onset, meaning we're not serving youth. We're serving adults who want to learn how to hunt. They tend to be first generation hunters, meaning you don't like a lot of hunters have sort of learned how to hunt from like a, like a family member who would have taught them. And we're assuming that a lot of people who are coming out of sort of urban and suburban environments don't necessarily have those that family. And so we are a chosen family. We're kinfolk, you're kin. And we're also making a decision to specifically serve communities that haven't really always felt welcome in the outdoors, to try to make it a more welcoming and friendly place. And what we do is we run mentored hunts. We do outdoor events. We do archery skills days. We do things like this. So basically, we're trying to convey as much education as we can through all the channels that are possible. Keyboard's not working. I'll skip over this because I just sort of talked about this, but yeah, Kinfolk is a community. I do want to touch on that. A lot of learn to hunt programs tend to be sort of event based, meaning you go, you have a great time, maybe it's a pheasant hunt, and then it's over and you don't really know what to do next. There's not really a good next step. So we focus really hard on trying to make sure that there's a community there of people who are sort of at all levels who you can lean on and can support you through your hunting journey. Mentorship is a key part of what we're doing. Whether it's our main hunt events are we'll pair you up one-on-one with a mentor, but also we're doing things like classes like this. We recognize that people coming out of city environments have a lot of unique barriers that if you live in the country you may not have. Things like access to a backyard to practice archery, or easy access to a gun range. And so we do our best to try to find those barriers and chip away at them. And then we're also really focusing on developing folks. As a community, we want you to stick around and grow in your skills and ultimately become a mentor. And that means it's not a one and done type of thing. We need to sort of like think about where what do you need to sort of grow in your skills and how can we provide that? All right, so back to Hunter Ed and sorry, back to rules and regulations. We're going to cover kind of everything tonight. We're going to fly through these pretty quickly, but I think with the right level of depth. Briefly want to cover why there are rules and regulations. I think that's a thing that is glossed over, and it's actually pretty important to talk about, especially when we use the terms like conservation. There are education requirements that are I think required everywhere across the country at this point, before you can actually buy a license. So I want to go through those briefly. Want to go through how you actually purchase your license and then what is the difference between a license and a tag and a privilege and deer management permits or DMPs you'll hear. Then we're going to go into big game seasons and sort of how those work. Big game in New York is are white-tailed deer and bear. Then we'll go into small game, which include like squirrel, pheasant, grouse, a whole bunch of things, as well as turkey. I want to talk about waterfowl because that's actually a specific thing to call out that is different than everything else, and there's a little more complexity attached to it. And then finally, we'll end up with legal hunting hours because that is the thing that cuts across all of this and is not necessarily always intuitive. Okay, so why do the rules exist? So you'll hear the term North American Model of Wildlife Conservation, or maybe you've never heard that term, but it is a set of 7 sort of tenets or ideals that are meant to describe how hunting regulations work in most of North America. And I won't go through all 7, but the 4 that really I wanted to highlight. First is that wildlife is public property. I mean, it feels weird to say property, but deer squirrels, all the wild animals that we're hunting are not owned by individuals. You've the term of the king's deer that doesn't exist in North America. So wildlife is public property held in trust by the state, meaning that the states are required to manage that asset or that property. Again, it feels weird referring to animals as property, but they're meant to manage that to be fair and equitable for everyone. The second thing I want to call it is that markets are closed. At the turn of the century, there used to be a thing called market hunting, and a lot of wild game was hunted and sold. That was across the board, and most of our wild species were nearly extirpated from this country. White-tailed deer, which are, I think the last I heard, the estimates are there's around 30 million in this country. We're down to like 300,000, so a tiny number. Turkeys were nearly extinct on this continent, and this is because capitalism run amok is not necessarily a good thing. So it is illegal to sell or barter, meaning you cannot trade the meat of any wild game. And this is generally true across the country. It is definitely true in New York State. There are a few exceptions out there. Um, so just know that if you go on Instagram and be like, hey, I'll trade this backstrap from this deer I shot for some ducks, that is actually illegal and you can be ticketed for that. And it is a federal offense. So don't do that. And I think generally that is a good thing. We want these wild animals and this to be around forever, and selling them is a recipe for disaster. The third thing I want to call it is allocation by law, meaning because this public asset is held in trust by the state, they have to have some mechanism for how to allow people access to it. And they do that legally. And so that's through things like seasons, bag limits, tags, zones. Essentially, what we're going to cover tonight, the rules and regulations dictate how you are allowed to uh, harvest from that public asset in a fair and democratic way. The fourth thing I want to call out is that the decisions are meant to rest on science. So regulations are meant to be dictated by biologists who are looking at the health of that deer herd or the health of the turkey population, and they're making quick year by year adjustments to hunting regulations to ensure that they're going to be here forever, and that they're not going to be hunted out of it, hunted out of existence. And so DEC is our fish and game agency in New York, the Department of Environmental Conservation. They're looking at everything from harvest reports. They're out doing like field studies. They're doing population surveys, drone flights, all sorts of things to basically find data to get a sense for what is the health of that species. Um, so probably the biggest one we'll be talking about is deer, because that tends to be I think that is the most hunted species in America. But yeah, they're looking at all of these things. Uh, if you're curious about this, again, the North American model of wildlife conservation actually I think is a really good thing. It is not a prescriptive thing. It is meant to be descriptive. So it's somebody who sat down and looked at sort of all the laws and rules that kicked up across all of North America and said these are the sort of commonalities across them. But now it's sort of taken on its own thing, and people are looking at this as like somewhat of like this is how it should be. Um, and I will say briefly, this is not how it works in the rest of the world. There are, if you look at the African model, for example, there's actually more of like a pay to hunt type of situation. Not saying one's better than the other, but this is what we have, and I think it's good, and we believe in it. All right. So the other thing I want to call out is that hunting and fishing and shooting sports tend to fund all of this, or a significant portion of it. Depending on the state, it's anywhere from 60 to 80% of state Fish and Wildlife Agency budgets are funded directly from hunting, fishing, and shooting sports. This is a mix of excise taxes, meaning there's a tax that is placed on all hunting equipment, shooting equipment, guns, ammo, archery equipment, and then in the fishing world, also boats and fishing tackle and fuel for your boats at marinas. There's I think it's a 10 or 11% tax that's applied to all of that. And goes into a fund that is allocated to fish and wildlife agencies. The federal government pays that out to states. There's a match the match that the states have comes from license sales. So when you buy your $22 New York resident hunting license, uh, essentially of that $1.5 billion fund that the federal government has, $22 gets paid to New York State and is allocated to uh, fish and wildlife uh, agencies for conservation work. So um, there is a saying you'll hear a lot, which is hunting is conservation, and that is technically true in that it's funding a lot of it. Um, Unfortunately, I would say that oftentimes hunters sort of stop there, and I think there's more we could be doing for conservation. But at the very least, if you buy a license and you don't hunt, rest assured that money is going towards ensuring that our wild places are being protected and that is funneling into sort of wildlife management. A lot of people don't know that, and it's really important to know. The third thing I want to add as to why the rules exist is that and I touched on this earlier with regulations being driven by science and meant to be moving quickly to adapt to things. This is real. So there are regulations that changed in 2026 for deer hunting, and two things sort of kicked into that. One is that um, it is well known that in certain units, mostly through the Hudson Valley and some other areas, the deer herd is out of control. Or they're basically exceeding carrying capacity of the land because their habitat is being removed by development and a bunch of other things. The side effect of that is that they're eating the regrowth of the new forest before it can grow. So we have a forest that is all sort of one age class and is at a risk of dying out because you're not sort of having the young trees replace it because there's too many deer. Um, the management tool there is doe harvest because does are the ones that sort of are sort of are driving the population growth. DC knows this, and this is a thing that's been sort of talked about by a lot of sort of land trust and biologists in the area. They know this, but they also know that only 17% of New York hunters took an antlerless deer last season, although 60% had the opportunity. And this is because people are basically, whatever the reason, but there a lot of hunters are out there saying, I'm only going to shoot a big buck and I don't want to shoot a doe. So they're looking at that terms of like more, I'm going to shoot one deer and I want the giant antlers as opposed to like how can hunting be conservation? And so what DC changed regulations, they did this through changing how we'll go into this more later on, but essentially more units that have September management hunt. They changed the way deer management permits work to encourage more people to shoot antlerless deer, and they took away a buck tag and made it a second earn a buck for the second tag, meaning you get one buck tag for the season, and to get the second one, you have to shoot an antlerless deer. So this is, regardless of your opinion on that, some people hate it, some people love it. The reality is that this is an example of how regulations work. DEC noticed an issue, they looked at the data, and they made a regulation change that in the next season. And this is exactly how this process is meant to work, and also why you need to stay on top of it because it does change season by season. Okay, let's jump into how do you get a hunting license. So the first thing you need to do, and I'm assuming, well, actually, I'm not going to assume. First thing you need to do is you have to take hunter education. You'll hear that term, and it is a requirement to purchase a license across the country. It does not teach you how to hunt. It is poorly named. Hunter education is about safety. It's about how to hunt safely without hurting yourself or hurting someone else. New York State was actually the first state in the United States to make hunter education mandatory. That was in 1949. Um, since that time, injuries due to shooting incidents and other types of falling out of tree stands has been dropping at a regular pace. Just as an example, through the 60s and early 70s, I think the number was like 100, like somewhere around averaging around 149 people were being shot every year by hunters mistaking their target or not paying attention to what was beyond the target. Last year, that number was seven, and none of them were fatal. In fact, most of those I think were people accidentally shooting themselves, which is, still not great, but the numbers have fallen. So hunter education is about how to be safe in the woods. It's about how to be safe with your gun, how to be safe in a tree stand, a little bit around sort of law, like the sort of legal system and hunter ethics, but for the most part, it is about how to be safe. And it is required before you can get a hunting license. Um, You have to take it before you get a hunting license. If you've had a license before, you don't have to take it. Meaning, if you predate the requirement somehow, you're grandfathered in. Again, New York, it was 1949, so you probably need to take it. A class is there is a rule around what is an acceptable class. It is a minimum of 7 hours. It's in person or online. There is a test that you have to pass. Um, Once you pass it, you're going to get a card and it's going to have a number on it. That needs to be attached to your DEC profile, and that allows you to buy that license. It's been a while since I've done it, so I don't know if they automatically attach it to your profile, but if they don't, you can do it through either their online portal or you can call them and have them add it. And the other thing to point out is that Hunter Ed certificates do tend to be accepted across the country. So if you took it in another state, moved here, it's highly likely that that will count. New York is one of not every state in the US requires this, but New York does. I don't know the total number, but there's a number of states that do require bow hunter education. This is a second education course you have to take if you want to hunt with a bow or a crossbow. It's the exact same sort of concept. It operates very similar. You have to take the course, and again, you'll get a certificate with a number attached to it. It needs to be attached to your profile. And as of last year, so prior to 2025, crossbows did not require this. They do now because there was a law change last year that crossbows are now considered vertical bows in terms of regulations and law. So, um, so if you want to hunt with a crossbow and you have not taken bow hunter education, you do need to take bow hunter education. Um, Again, I mentioned you can do it in person or you can do it online. In person is free. This is the DEC, and I think most states have been running a pretty massive volunteer uh, program where you have volunteer instructors who will teach this. They run classes kind of all over the state year round. I will say this time of year, it can be rough to find a seat because they do fill up pretty quickly because we're getting close to hunting season and people are sort of rushing into it. So you do have an option since COVID. There is now an online course you can take. It is not free, but it's the exact same course. What you don't get in the online is the in-person ones. They do a field day where you're out, uh, sort of. Usually, it's like somewhere outdoors where you can actually practice some of the safe handling of firearms and things like that. Online does not have that, so you get a little bit more in person, and it's free. But there's an online option as well. And again, this is not teaching you to hunt. This is teaching you how to be safe. The final thing I want to highlight, because a lot of people don't know this, you do this once in your life. You never do it again. So this is a one and done type of thing. I highly recommend if you haven't done it and you think you want to hunt, do it now because at the moment in time, specifically if you want to come to one of a Kinfolk event, we've had people drop out last minute and we contact people and say, hey, do you want to come? And they haven't done this yet. And you're talking about, for bow hunter and regular hunter ed, you're talking about 16 hours of online courses that you're going to have to do quickly. We've had people do it, but it's best to just get this out of the way and get it done. You learn a lot. It's fun, I think, personally. And once you do it, you're done. And once you do that, you can buy a license. So, uh, buying your hunting license, there's a couple ways to do this. The easiest is to do it online. There's a link on DEC's website. I'll send all links after this, but you can just Google New York hunting license, and I feel like the first thing that comes up is the DEC's webpage, and it'll list all these three things um, with a link to the online portal. You can also do it in person. You can go to like your town hall to do it. Walmart typically does it. Like a lot of outdoor stores will do it. So you can go do it in person. They have a list on their website of finding these locations. So, if you don't know where to go, you just go there and put in your zip code and they'll give you a list that's nearby. And you can also do it over the phone. And so you'll basically be in contact with DEC and they will talk you through it. A couple things I want to call out. There is a resident and a non-resident license, meaning are you a resident of the state? That means you've lived here for 30 days prior to applying for that license. So if you just moved here 2 weeks before, you're going to have to get a non-resident license. The only difference is that the price is a little bit more. But yeah, resident license, you're going to need some sort of proof of residency. That'll be your driver's license typically. or ID card or whatever. You're going to need to know your hunter education certificate number if that hasn't already been entered. Um, if you have had a license before, like some sort of like fishing license before, you will have a DEC identification number. That'll be good to have. And then specifically, this is more of a niche thing, but if you are a landowner and you have more than 50 acres, you can apply for what's called a DMP tag, which is a deer management permit. That you'll need a tax map ID. I'm not going to go into that because that's kind of niche and doesn't affect most people. To buy your license, here's an example of what you would spend as a resident if you want to hunt deer with archery equipment. So you're going to get a hunting license. That's $22. You will need what's called a bow hunting privilege that allows you to hunt deer with archery equipment during the early archery season and or the late archery season. We'll go into that in a second. And then maybe you want to apply for a DMP application. And this is, again, we'll go into that in a second, but that is additional tags. So you spend $47, you would get 3 deer tags, you would get 1 antlered deer tag with your hunting license, you would get an antlerless one with your bow hunting privilege, and then you would get DMPs that came out of that. There are other things you can add to this. There's a muzzle loading season that happens. You can pay $15 to do that. That tends to be very late in the season after your sort of regular deer season ends, usually like late December. If you want to hunt turkeys, that's a $10 tag that will cover both spring and fall turkey season. And then if you want to hunt waterfowl, you're going to need a couple things. The one thing you will get from the DEC license purchasing thing is what's called a HIP. It's a hunter. I don't even know why I can't remember what it is, but it's basically a reporting waterfowl harvest years. It is required federally. It's free. You add it and it just goes into your cart and you'll have a number associated with it. Uh, I will add, if you do want to hunt waterfowl, you do have to have a federal duck stamp. That is not tied to the DEC. That is tied through the federal government. We'll go into that later, but that is a thing you would get separately. Um, as of a couple of years ago, DEC used to print out licenses and send them to you on sort of a plasticky type of paper. They stopped doing that because it was expensive. Now, when you complete this process, you will get a PDF that you can download. I think they also email it to you, and you can print that out. They also have an app you can download called the New York Hunt Fish app. Highly recommend you get it. Your licenses and tags will automatically get added to that. And if you still want it printed, they will do that for you. You just have to pay them. Like I think it's $1 or something like that. So yeah, here you go. Download that Hunt Fish app. It is a free app. I think exists for both iOS and Android. It is, I think, well worth it. It's it's not the greatest app. It can be a little janky at times, but it does have your licenses, your hunting license there. It has all your tags there. Um, Meaning if a game warden or any environmental conservation officer checks you, you can just show them your phone. You don't have to have the printed out tags on you. It does have links to the Reg book, so if you're curious on how to, like I can't remember something, you can click there and access it quickly. Um, it has included in it seasons and hours PDF, so you can just look at that even if you don't have Wi-Fi. And the thing I think is nice is actually if you do shoot a deer or some animal that requires you to tag it, you can tag it directly in the app right there. And so you don't have to fill out paper and like attach it to the animal. I think that makes things a lot easier personally. I would suggest if you do install it, do it at home while you're on Wi-Fi. You have a good strong signal so you can get logged in, get everything. It'll download it and then it caches it on the phone. So it will work even if you don't have internet access. All right, so let's talk about licenses and tags. Like, what do they even mean? So your hunting license is your permission to hunt. That is the base. You need to have that to hunt anything in New York, whether that's small game like a squirrel, big game like deer or bear, or just to hunt. If you want to be out in the woods hunting, you need to have a license. That's your hunting license that costs $22. You'll hear the term privilege. That's a permission for a season. So there's a bow hunting privilege and a muzzle loading privilege, and then there's also a turkey privilege. Those give you permission to hunt during different seasons. And again, those are specifically for big game. but we'll go into those a little bit later. But there is a early bow hunting season and a late bow hunting season. You cannot hunt deer or bear with just your basic license. And then a tag is essentially it's the permission to harvest one animal. It's a carcass tag. It's tied to, it'll usually say on it what animal it's good for, how they can be taken, and when they can be taken. So, for example, when you get a hunting license with a bow hunting privilege, you will get a tag that is entitled, it'll literally say bow hunting uh, antlerless deer. And you can use that during the bow hunting seasons for an antlerless deer. Um, And here's a breakdown of kind of all that stuff. So hunting license is $22, non-residents 100, your bow hunting privilege 15, non-resident 30. Sort of fly through this pretty quick, but I think I covered all that. The duck stamp is again not tied to, you're not going to get that from the DEC, that's from the federal government, but that is $25 and has been $25 for some time. They probably need to raise the price. So, what tags do you get attached to what? Because again, this is where it starts to get a little confusing, but if you think about it as your license is the right to hunt, the privilege is when you can hunt, and the tag is what you can harvest. This is kind of how it works. So, your hunting license by default will give you one antlered deer tag, meaning you can shoot a buck. An antlered tag means that it has antlers that are 3 inches or longer. They will also give you a regular season bear tag. This just comes with that license without adding any privileges. Um, Bow hunting privilege, you're going to get, they will call this bow slash muzzleloader because they sort of treat them similarly, but you will get one tag that will say bow slash muzzleloader antlerless deer tag. And that will allow you to hunt during the early and late bow hunting season. Muzzleloader privilege, you'll get another one that's called one bow slash muzzleloader antlerless deer tag, and that allows you to hunt during the muzzleloader season with a muzzleloader. Your turkey permit, you're going to get 3 turkey tags, 2 for the spring. Those are during the spring season of turkey hunting, which is in May, and then 1 for the fall, and that season's much shorter and depends on the dates depend on where you're at. So we'll go in that shortly. And then a DMP, you can get up to 4 DMPs as of this year. And for each one that you get, you will get an antlerless tag. That is valid in what's called a WMU or a wildlife management unit. That's a region of the state. So the DMP is tied specifically to that region. What is different with the DMP is it can be used in any other season. So you can use it during the early bow hunter. You can use it during the regular season. You can use it during the muzzleloader. So you can use it basically anytime you're allowed to legally hunt deer, you can use that tag, but it is limited to just that unit that you applied for. And I will say we're going to get into DMPs in a second, but DMPs are essentially one of the more effective tools that DEC has for encouraging people to harvest does. And so the tags operate, the availability of those tags are based off the deer density in that unit. And that's why they operate specifically for a unit. So if you're in an area where there's an insane amount of deer, they're going to give you more, they're going to be more available tags for that unit. Whereas if you're in an area where there's hardly any deer, it's very difficult to get a DMP tag. I think we covered this. An antler deer tag means it's the right to harvest an antler deer with at least one antler that is 3 inches or longer. An antlerless tag, which is bow muzzleloader, is only valid during the bow hunting and muzzleloading seasons. You cannot use that during the regular season. So this is before the regular season is kind of in the middle. You can't use it during that. And then a DMP tag is any season, but just limited to that unit. And just to clarify again, because this does confuse people, antlerless means does, fawns, and bucks with antlers under 3 inches. So, and they do that because they don't want to penalize someone who accidentally shoots a buck because they didn't see that, they didn't have antlers. Like they can sometimes fall off. And also if they're very young, maybe they haven't grown them. So. All right, deer management permits. We're going to talk a little bit more about this because this is a thing that changed this year and it's caused a lot of confusion for people, and I want to make sure that we're clear on it. And also because, as I mentioned, these are valuable tools for DC to manage the deer herd. So direct, like almost more directly tied to conservation than some of the other tags. So DMP lets you take one antlerless deer per permit, and it's in addition to any of your other license and privileges. It's any deer season, but only in that particular unit that's printed. You can apply for up to four of these as of 2026. That's new. Two in what's called an unlimited unit, and two which is in a lottery unit. Um, and in the unlimited units, if you harvest a deer with it, it will automatically give you another one. So uh, that's why they call it unlimited. So some dates that are important as of August 3rd, that's when they open up applications for DMPs. This is in the same place you would buy your license. It would like, you buy your license, you can actually purchase DMPs there. In a limited lottery unit, meaning it's not in one of the unlimited units, you have to do this before October 1st. Otherwise, it locks down. And then on November 1st, they reopen it in the lottery units for any leftovers, and you can it's first come, first serve, and you can get them for free. So you go and I think typically that's through, you have to do that in person. You can't do it online for some reason. So I usually just go into my town hall and they have no idea what I'm talking about, but they finally figure it out when I sort of push them on it. I touched on this. So there's two kinds of units. Lottery unit is there's a cap number of permits, and that's dictated by sort of a model of how many deer they think are there and how many people they think are going to be hunting and what is the likelihood of those hunters actually harvesting a tag. And they're modeling that off of like lots and lots and lots of prior years of data. You apply for it by the close of business on October 1st. It's generally automatic. It will tell you whether you got it or not. And then if you do not get it, they give you preference points for next year. So uh, they tend to be, for those of us who are hunting closer to sort of the city, these tend to not be around here. They tend to be a little bit further away. There's a lot of deer where we're at. So a lot of the units closer to the city, so specifically Westchester, which is unit 3S, and Long Island, Suffolk County, which is on Long Island, which is 1C, those are unlimited units, meaning you apply for them and you just get it. There's no such thing as preference points here. Anyone who applies will get one, and they're unlimited. So if you were in Suffolk County and you shoot a doe and you tag it with your 1C DMP, it will automatically give you another one. They'll just replace it as if you had a new one. So effectively, you can, in those units, you could effectively shoot as many deer as you could, until you run out of ammo or freezer space. I talked about WMUs. These are relevant specifically for DMPs, but they're also really relevant for just knowing where you're at because some of the rules differ across them. So I don't know, can everyone see this? Is this like zoomed in enough? Does it, well, if it's not, I don't know how to zoom it in more. So you'll have to get the book and look online. But down here's New York City. New York City's WMU is 2A. So it actually does have a WMU. There's no hunting there, but there is a WMU. Westchester is this orange one just above the city. That's 3S. Nassau County is 1A. There's no hunting for deer there. But Suffolk County is 1C, which is the eastern portion of Long Island. That's an unlimited unit. So when you're applying for your DMPs, you're kind of looking at this map and you're deciding where do you think you're going to hunt. And again, remember, you get two in unlimited units and two in limited units. So they will make that clear to you what's unlimited and what's limited. But generally, where you're seeing this early antlerless season, which is September 12th to September 20th, that's where they think there's too many deer. So they're having a special hunt that's happening in September before the season opens. That hunt is only allowed to be taken with the DMP. You can only harvest with a DMP. So meaning September 12th to September 20th, you can hunt, but you cannot shoot a buck. And you cannot use any of your tags except for DMPs, and you have to have a DMP for that unit that you're hunting in. So when people are like, where should I apply for it? It's really a question for where do you think you're going to hunt and where do you want to hunt? I personally live in 3N here in Putnam County. I get a DMP. I applied for an unlimited unit in 3M, which is where we do a lot of hunting. 3S, which is Westchester, which is bow hunting only, and I bow hunt there a lot. And then I did 3N, it's Putnam County, and I did 4H, and I didn't get it, so I got a preference point. So I ended up getting 3 DMPs from that. I think I just covered this, but what changed in 2026? Again, this was as a result of people not shooting does and realizing that the deer herd is really sort of oversized for the habitat that they have available to them. Prior to this year, you could only get 2 DMPs. This year, you can get 4. Prior to last season, you could get 2 DMPs transferred to you. So if I didn't want to use my 3N, I could transfer it over to someone. I could sign it over to someone else, and they could use it. Previously, you could only get 2 of those transferred to you over to you. Now it's unlimited. So the unlimited units from last season were limited. I think like 1C, 3S, or maybe a couple more. This season, it's 23 of them. So a lot more WMUs are moved to unlimited. Similarly, the early September antlerless hunt was a very limited set of units. They've expanded that to many more this season. And then, as I mentioned, Earn a Buck has happened this year as well. So a lot of changes. They're specifically reacting to people not shooting antlerless deer in units where there are too many deer. Okay, I've talked a lot about seasons and zones. I do want to go into those a little bit more because seasons are when we are allowed to hunt a particular species, and it's good to know those seasons because if you hunt them out of date, then that is not legal. So for big game, which is again white-tailed deer and bear, they generally break the state in half, and they call it the northern zone and the southern zone. The northern zone is basically the Adirondacks. It's the yellow on this map here. And then the southern zone is everything south of there. And so if you, as a general rule, the dates are going to, for big game, are going to be very different depending on whether you're north or south. And that's because of the climate. It's much colder up there. It's because of the habitat. There's just less to eat. If you look at generally, the northern zone starts a little bit earlier and ends a little bit earlier in the year. So, for example, the early bow hunting and the northern zone is September 27th through October 23rd. In the southern zone, that's October 1st through November 20th. So we're mostly, I'm assuming most of the people on this call are probably hunting in the southern zone. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But pay attention to this to know that you're hunting legally when you're allowed to. I will call it that Suffolk and Westchester do have their own calendars and their own rules. They are and that's because they don't tend to allow firearms for the most part. So Westchester is October 1st through December 31st, or maybe it's January 1st. That's the 31st. And then Suffolk County is bow hunting regular season from October 1st through January 31st. And then they also have a special firearms that happens January 3rd to January 31st. So you'll want to pay attention to these maps in the reg book. Yeah, I'm gonna fly through this, but yeah, generally bow hunting is the first thing that happens. That will always happen October 1st in the southern zone. It tends to end like the middle of November. This year it's November 20th. That will roll right into the regular season, which is the 21st through December 13th. The regular season is also commonly referred to as the gun season. That's when rifles and firearms are allowed. That ends December 13th. And then after that, from the 14th through the 22nd, you will have muzzleloader and late bow hunting will sort of run on top of each other. And then at the end of the 22nd, that's when hunting ends for big game. Except for 3 or 4 years ago, I don't remember exactly when it was, they added what they call the holiday hunt, which is December 26th through the January 1st. And that is also for muzzleloader and bow hunting. And that's really a late season hunt for southern units. And then, as I mentioned, Suffolk County does have a shotgun period hunt that is open January 3rd through the 31st, and that is a permit required. Bear seasons are similar. So they have an early hunt in September. It's the 12th through the 27th. Their bow hunting regular, and then late bow and muzzleloader run identical to deer. So for the most part, big game sort of looks the same. There are specific rules you need to be aware of if you are bear hunting. You get one tag, so don't shoot multiple bears. In the southern zone, you are not allowed to shoot cubs. You can't shoot any bear that's with another group of bears because likely that is a cub with a mother. And you cannot shoot them from their den. Um, there's no bait, no dogs. You are allowed to use sort of a liquid lure, but it's like a specific limit to the amount, 1.5 ounces, and it cannot be consumable. If you do shoot a bear, you have to report it. This is true of all big game. But for bear particularly, you do have to send in a premolar tooth, and they use that to age the bear, and then they will give you back a patch. And this is the science that I refer to. So they're sort of keeping track of um, what's being harvested. So good to know. I do want to cover some specific rules you need to remember. This is not all of them, so you are responsible for sort of looking at that reg book and knowing what you can and cannot do. But some big ones that you need to be aware of. If you are hunting big game with a firearm, or you're accompanying somebody hunting big game with a firearm, you are required to wear solid orange or pink, 250 square inches. A hat will count. I tend to do both because I think it's good to be seen out in those woods. Um, Certain WMUs do have antler point restrictions. That means that they've decided that you're not allowed to shoot small bucks. Um, those are the list. You should, again, as you're looking to where you're hunting, make sure you're paying attention to what you're allowed to shoot. Even if you have a buck tag, if you shoot a small buck in those, which is it's a buck with an antler with they need to have an antler with 3 or more points and at least an inch long. Um, you can be ticketed for that if you shoot something smaller than that in those units. It is illegal to feed or bait deer or bear or most animals for hunting. That is not true in all states. New Jersey, for example, allows you to bait, but in New York, that is not legal. So, and baiting doesn't mean that you put the bait out there. If you come across a pile of corn and decide to set up, and the ECO shows up, you will be ticketed for baiting, even if you didn't put it there. So make sure you're not, or apples, or anything that you think deer might want to eat. Setbacks, that specifically means how far away from a dwelling do you need to be before you fire a weapon. For firearms, that is 500 feet across the state. You cannot be within 500 feet. That's 166 yards of a dwelling if you're going to shoot a gun, unless you have permission from that homeowner. For crossbows, that is 250 feet, with the exception of Suffolk and Westchester, where it's 500 feet. It's a bit extreme, I think, but that's the law. And then for a bow, you need to be 150 feet away from a dwelling. And again, this is all assuming you do not have the owner's consent. If you do have the owner's consent, you can be much closer. Legal implements, if you're going to hunt with a bow, it needs to have a draw weight of 35 pounds or higher. That is to ensure that you get an ethical kill. You don't want to have an arrow that is going so slow that it can't kill the deer. Crossbows used to have a whole bunch of restrictions. Those have been all removed as of last year. So the one restriction that is important is that it has to be a 100-pound minimum draw weight. And it does have to have a working safety on the trigger. So most crossbows that you will purchase in the store now will meet that. So used to, there were minimums around like limb length and a whole bunch of other stuff, but that got removed. If you're hunting with a shotgun, it has to be 20 gauge or larger, and it has to be single projectile. In New York, buckshot is not legal for hunting, so do not do that. Rifle has to be a centerfire. You cannot use a 22 rimfire rifle to hunt deer. And if you're shooting with a muzzleloader, it needs to be a .44 or larger caliber. Most muzzleloaders are 50 caliber, so generally fine. And then it is important in New York. You're in New York where there are a lot of rules around gun safety. If you're traveling with a gun in your car, it needs to be unloaded, meaning there can't be an ammo in the chamber and there can't be ammo in the magazine. For crossbow, it cannot have a bolt in it and it needs to be uncocked. So these are the bare minimum. I would also suggest if you're driving anywhere near New York City, you make sure that your gun is locked up in a locked case in the back of your vehicle and your ammo is locked up separately just to be extra careful on this stuff. So. All right, and then just briefly, I want to talk about we talked about those weapons and what you can use, there are restrictions across the state where you can use, where you can and cannot use certain things. So if you look at this map, everywhere where it's orange, you can use all those weapons. You can use a bow, a crossbow, muzzleloader, handgun. You can actually hunt with handguns, shotgun with a slug, rifle. In the light blue, you cannot use a rifle. That's the one thing that gets removed. So that is Rockland County, Putnam County, and Dutchess County that are close to us. There's a couple on the western part of the state. In the dark blue, which is Westchester and Suffolk and Albany, you can only use a bow or a crossbow. And then if it's white, you can't use anything. That's New York City and Nassau County. So important to know, if you're going to be hunting in Putnam County, don't bring a rifle. It is worth calling out, it is illegal to shoot from, along, or across any sort of public road. This says highway, but it's actually any road. Don't do that. It is also illegal to shoot from inside a vehicle or on a vehicle, meaning you cannot get out of your vehicle and rest your gun across the hood of your car and shoot. That is considered illegal. Don't do that. So generally stay away from roads, and you'll be okay if you're hunting. And then finally, if you do harvest something, you need to tag it. E-tagging counts. I mentioned you can do that in the app. You need to do it immediately. If you don't want to use the e-tag and you have printed out paper, you need to attach it as soon as you basically get a hold of that animal. And I mean, I usually tag it right away. Technically, it doesn't need to be attached to the animal until you reach your vehicle or camp or home. But I find that it's best just to get it on right away. And you do have to report it to the DEC within 48 hours. That used to be 7 days. This is newer, so 48 hours. Make sure you were getting in touch with them within 2 days to tell them that you shot a deer or a bear. You can do that directly in the app. You can do it on the phone. You can do it on the website. There's a lot of ways to do that, but just make sure you do it. Earn a second buck, I think I talked about. I will point out this has changed for those of you who have hunted in previous years. You could only generally shoot your buck tag during regular season. Buck tags are now legal to use from October 1st through the end. So even if you get two, say you go out on October 1st and you shoot a doe, you're going to have 2 buck tags. You go out on October 2nd and shoot 2 bucks. There is one thing to call out. I don't know how they're going to actually really enforce this, but because you have to shoot an antlerless deer to get that buck tag, there was a bunch of people worried that people were just going to file the tag to lie, which is, again, silly. I don't know why you would do that, but so now DEC is saying that you have to take a picture of the head or keep the head for 7 days. And so I don't really know how the photo proves anything, but yeah, if you do shoot an antlerless deer, you should take a picture of that deer and keep it on your phone for 7 days. DEC can technically check you, and if you don't have it, that's a ticket. So, I mentioned this. Tagging is required pretty quickly. With the e-tagging, the only thing I'll add to this is you do not have to paper tag that deer or attach anything to the carcass as long as that deer stays in your possession. So if you drop it off at a processor to be processed, you have to then affix a tag to it. If you leave it at deer camp and you're not with it, you have to fix a tag with it. So that doesn't have to be the actual printed out tag. You'll actually get a confirmation from your e-tag. It'll have a number attached to it. So you'll need your name, your DEC ID, and that confirmation number, and you can just write down a piece of paper and attach it to the deer, and that counts. I often just print out my tags anyway, so I just have them and I can just attach it to the deer. And again, as I mentioned, you have 48 hours to report it. All right, that's big game. Let's talk about small game and turkey. This is covered by, for the most part, your basic hunting license. Again, this is not covering everything. There's a whole bunch of different. If you look in the book, there's many small game variant species you can hunt. These are some of the more common ones. You'll see that gray squirrel actually opens in a few days, September 1st. They're fantastic table fare. Highly encourage you to hunt them. They are fun to hunt, and they're also delicious. So, and they're also the first thing you can hunt. So for those, you just need your hunting license. There's no privileges, no tags. You don't have to report the harvest. The hours to hunt are sunrise to sunset. We didn't talk about this in big game. For most big game, the hours are half an hour before sunrise to half an hour after sunset. For small game, most of them are sunrise to sunset. We'll go into the specifics for a bunch of species later. Uh, One thing I will call out, and this was something I didn't know, and I had to triple check it as I was digging into this, but you're not allowed to use crossbows for small game in Westchester or Suffolk. I think that's weird, but it is a weird thing that is written into the law books. So you can use them for big game, but you can't use them for small game. But generally, anywhere else you can use a crossbow or archery equipment for just about any of this. The turkey permit I do want to talk about. So turkey, that's a $10 additional permit that's added. And as I mentioned before, that gives you 3 tags. It gives you 2 for spring. So the turkey season is May 1st to May 31st. It is a super fun time to hunt. You legally can harvest 2 bearded birds, meaning they have a special type of feather that grows out of their chest. It's referred to as the beard. That is typically mostly on the males of the species, but sometimes the hens do grow them. Um, so bearded bird is the requirement. You cannot shoot more than 1 in a day, and only one of those birds can come out of Suffolk, which is 1C. The legal hours for turkeys are half an hour before sunrise, and they stop at noon. And that's to allow the hens to basically be unbothered by hunters when they're sitting on their nest. They usually will feed in the morning and then they'll go sit on their nest the rest of the day. And so they want to make sure that we're not out there tormenting them so that they can actually raise their young. Um, dogs are not allowed for hunting them. I don't know anybody who would do that anyway, but in the fall, there is another turkey season. It used to be pretty popular. I don't know that a lot of people do it anymore. I certainly don't because it's deer season. But that is from October 17th to October 30th, and that's in most of the southern zone. Again, check the reg book for specifics. You can shoot 1 bird, and there could be of either sex. So you can shoot a hen if you want. And the hours for that are sunrise to sunset. And you can use a dog. DEC does want you to save a leg on that. And that's because they're going to want to see what the sex is. And like the males will have a spur, which is like a little sort of spike on the inside of the leg, and the hens will not. And you do have to report turkeys to the DEC. So that'll be done the same way you would report a deer or a bear. You can hunt them with a shotgun or a handgun. I don't know that I would do that, but you can hunt them with a shotgun, and that you're using shot. And there are size requirements on that shot. It cannot be larger than number 2 and smaller than number 9. You are allowed to use a bow or a crossbow. No rifles, no air guns, no bullets. You can use decoys. You can call to them, but you cannot use an electric call, and baiting is also not allowed for turkeys. So, highly recommend spring turkey hunting. It is fantastic, and it is a really good time. It's a great time to be out in the woods. It's like spring. Winter's over. It feels nice to be out there, and also it's just a crazy experience because it's their breeding season, and the males or gobblers are gobbling like crazy. So it's really interactive. Okay, time check. All right, we're cruising along. I'm a little behind schedule, but we're almost done. Waterfowl. Um, Waterfowl is different than all this because there are federal rules on top of the state rules, and that is because waterfowl are migratory birds, meaning they don't just live in New York; they fly through, and they're cruising through a lot of states, and so the federal government has a say in this. So what you need to hunt with waterfowl, you need your hunting license in New York. You need to have that HIP registration. You can get that from the same place you get your hunting license, and you need to get a federal duck stamp. Uh, that is required. It is not something you will get through DEC. You can typically buy it at post offices, although sometimes they have no idea what you're talking about. And you can also get it online now. I want to call out the duck stamp in particular. This has been around since 1934. It is a super efficient means of donating to conservation. 98 cents of every dollar goes directly into wetland habitat acquisition and easements. And this is, this is like, this is a way to just give money to the government to tell them to go and protect wetlands. And they have to do it. It's written into law. They can't use that money for anything else. It is not only for hunters. Anyone can buy a duck stamp, and a lot of people do. Birders, photographers do. Some people just collect them because there's a competition every year to design it and draw it, and it's like really pretty artwork. So, I have all the ones I've ever bought sort of stuck on my wall, just because I think they're really cool and pretty. So even if you don't hunt waterfowl, I highly would encourage you to go and get a duck stamp because it is, and you can get multiple ones, if you're feeling generous. It's a good way to contribute directly to conservation, and specifically to wetland habitats, which is a very important type of conservation that is sometimes overlooked. All right, let's talk about duck hunting, though. This is where it gets a little more complicated. There's more zones and units. So for ducks zones, there's a lot going on here, but I wanted to call it the ones closest to the city. So the ones that are nearest to us are the southeast zone, which is the light blue on this map, and then the Long Island zone, which is the orange. So the hunts there, if you look at most duck hunts, there will be what's called early and a late split, meaning the season opens up, then it shuts down, and then it reopens up again. In the southeastern zone for ducks, that is the early split is October 10th through the 18th. The late split is November 7th through the 27th. On Long Island, it's November 21st through the 29th for the first split, then December 12th through the end of January for the second split. Duck hunting is really fun. Ducks are delicious. It is a little challenging to get into because there's a lot of gear, and the regulations can be a little bit complicated, but we'll go into that in a second. Goose is another migratory waterfowl bird that requires all those things I just talked about, duck stamp, hip number. The zones here are a little insane. And it's easy to get into trouble with this because of that. So if you look down closer to the city, you'll see the southern zone is the darker blue. And then you'll see the Hudson Valley zone, which is the lighter blue. And the southern zone is split between the two. So there's literally points where you can, and I will also point out the dates are different between those zones and the bag limits are different. So the southern zone bag limit for geese during the regular season is 5 geese a day. In the Hudson Valley one, it's 3. That's literally something I've actually literally hunted in places where you cross the road and you're a different zone. And so you need to be very careful here because it is easy to shoot more than you should and shoot out of date. So make sure you're looking at this map carefully. Um, because it's complicated. And the reason they're doing this, by the way, is because geese are migratory. The Canada goose is a migratory bird, and so the migrators, the ones that are coming from far north, their population is not as great as what are called the residents. And the residents are the ones who are living in like the parks and in town and like in a park or at like a school like field or something like that. They never leave and they're doing really well. And so DEC goes through unit by unit and tries to figure out like what type of bird is, and like the bag limit is sort of set accordingly. You will also see that for goose, there's a September 1st through September 25th that's happening. And the daily limit is 15 birds a day. That is a management hunt, and that is for resident birds. The migrators haven't really started showing up yet, so you're basically they're saying we need to try to shoot these birds that are honestly becoming a bit of a menace to people in these towns. The challenge with that is that they're often in places where you can't hunt, like they're in town in a park, so you're not really going to be able to find them. So, but it is worth pointing out that that's why that is happening, and it is science-based regulations at work. This is why those limits are so different and why these units are so complex. I'm not going to go through all this because I just sort of covered it on this previous slide, but again, just look, the dates are very different depending on the unit and also the bag limits. So make sure you're paying attention to the reg book if you are hunting geese. Duck bag limits, I do want to call out. So typically, and this is true of the whole state, and also much of the flyway, which is sort of the migratory path up and down the eastern seaboard. You can shoot 6 ducks per day, and you can have 18 ducks in your possession, and that means in your possession. So that's, if you do the math, that's like, 3 days worth of hunting. Make sure that you're eating your ducks if you're beyond that point, because you can get in trouble if you have 20 ducks in your freezer. So 6 ducks per day. Of those 6, it's not just 6 any duck. So ducks, there's many types of ducks out there. There's mallards, there's wood ducks, there's pintails, black ducks. And the counts are specific to that species. So, for example, no more than 4 mallards out of that 6, no more than 4 can be mallards, and no more than 2 of those can be hens. No more than 3 can be wood ducks. No more than 3 can be pintails. No more than 2 black ducks, and so on. So what that means is that you need to be able to identify what you're shooting at while it's flying before you pull the trigger, because you can get yourself into trouble if you say you have two hens, two mallard hens in your possession, and you think that bird flying is a black duck, and you pull the trigger and it's another mallard hen, then you've now over the limit, and that is that is technically considered poaching. Like I mean, you've made a mistake. And I will say, because this is federally mandated as well, you will be ticketed essentially twice. You've broken New York State regulations and laws, and you've also broken federal ones. So you need to be very careful if you're going to hunt ducks, that you know what the ducks are and know what they look like while they're flying. Other rules to know for waterfowl. This is federally mandated non-toxic shot. That means you cannot use lead ammunition when you're shooting at any uh, waterfowl. Woodcock, for some reason, is allowed to use lead. I think that's typically because they're not necessarily in the water. But make sure you're using steel shot, bismuth, tin, tungsten, whatever, depending on how much money you have. Um, your gun cannot hold more than 3 shells. So meaning most shotguns will have a plug in the magazine tube. You need to make sure that plug is in there, and that ensures that you do not have more than three shells. So you can't pull the trigger more than 3 times. There are some exceptions for the September goose hunt where I said it's a management hunt. They let you shoot a lot more than. If you're in a boat, the motor has to be off, and the progress has to be, you have to be motionless before you start shooting. So you're not allowed to just be motoring around blasting away. You can use a motor to retrieve ducks that you've wounded that are swimming away from you. But generally, if you're out hunting, you need to be not under power and not moving. You're not allowed to use bait. You're not allowed to use live decoys, which was a thing back in the day. And you're not allowed to use electronic calls. And much like deer, an area is considered baited for 10 days after the bait is gone. So if DEC notices someone dumped a bunch of corn there and they clean it up, for the next 10 days, you're not allowed to hunt that spot. Federally, there is a wanton waste law on waterfowl, meaning it is illegal to shoot a bird and then just leave it. You need to go get it and you need to process it and eat it. So don't shoot things that you don't intend to keep and harvest. Shouldn't have to say that because it seems like common sense, but just it is also illegal. We're in the home stretch here. Legal hunting hours. I mentioned this earlier. This is different for species and season, but for deer and bear, it is always 1/2 an hour before sunrise to 1/2 an hour after sunset is the legal hour, the legal time you are allowed to hunt them. For most small game, it's sunrise to sunset. For spring turkey, it's a 1/2 an hour before sunrise to noon. For fall turkey, it's sunrise to sunset. Ducks, geese, brant, which is another type of goose, a 1/2 hour before sunrise to sunset. Woodcock, sunrise to sunset. So it's all very different, but you need to know this stuff. You know, they changed the rules for big game 3 or 4 years ago, and I didn't realize that that only applied to big game. I thought it was changing it for all hunting, and almost shot a squirrel after sunset because I thought it was a 1/2 an hour, and then the person I was with was like, no, 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 that's only for deer and bear. So you need to make sure you know this stuff. And I will point out that it is not based off of your watch or your phone. It is based off of this weird grid that's in the back of the reg book. It's also in the app. So basically, you will find your date on here. Like, if you're looking for October, which is the second column, second, then you come over and you look at it. Sunrise is 6:53, and then you find out where you are in the state, and there's these lines are +3, +5, +9, or -3, -6. You kind of have to do this goofy math to figure out what is legal and what is not legal. I think if you're off within a few minutes and you're not doing anything else wrong, if you're off by a minute or something or 30 seconds, the game warden's not necessarily going to smack you down, but you do need to legally know this stuff. So good reason to have the book or the app. All right, next steps. If you haven't taken your hunter education, I think you should do it. It is one and done, and it is a good thing to just get out of the way. If you do plan on hunting, buy your license, apply for your DMPs before October 1st. If you want to hunt the September hunt, do it before September 12th, which is the opening day for that. I would get the Hunt Fish app. It is worth having. Again, it's not like groundbreaking app technology, but it simplifies a lot of things, and it does have links to like that timetable that I just was showing you that's goofy and hard to read. It's on there, so you can just click on it, and you don't need service to click on it. And then again, always make sure you're looking at the reg book for where you're intending to hunt to make sure you're legal for season dates. You have the right implements. You're not carrying like a gun that you're not allowed to be using. You understand the bag limits. This is your responsibility to sort of know that you're following the rules. And with that, I'm going to stop and open it up for questions. And we made it longer than I thought it was going to take me, but um, still got it done in time. Any questions? Jump in.
Greg, good evening. Tony, this was great. Appreciate it. Quick question. You get your license, you can apply for several DMP unit tags at various locations.
Yeah, so this year you can get four, two and they it's not that you can just get any four. Two of them have to be in unlimited units and two of them have to be in lottery units.
So in my case, I can do 3P, which is Sterling Forest, and 3M, which is the next county over, correct?
Yes, and 3M, I believe 3M is unlimited. I don't know about 3P.
No, I don't think 3P is, but that's
So then you
Sterling
could
Forest.
yeah, so then you could get one more unlimited and one more lottery.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
up to four you
Okay,
can get.
and with the one license, I can hunt in both locations, 3P and 3M.
Yeah, but harvest you can only harvest the deer in that unit if you have that an antlerless deer if you have that tag. So if you punch your 3P tag on an antlerless deer, and that's not an unlimited one. Oh, okay. Well, someone says it is unlimited. So yeah, let's assume you're not in an unlimited one, so you don't get another one. You can't shoot another antlerless deer in that unit. If you're in an unlimited one and you file that and you punch that tag and you report it, it should just get like I don't know how fast, but I think pretty quickly, almost immediately, you will have another tag dropped into your app.
Okay. And I think I did read somewhere that it is unlimited this year in Sterling Forest.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
All
three
right, cool.
people.
So that means with the one license, $22, and the purchase of a DMP at 3P and one in 3M, I can hunt in both locations, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is great.
Yeah. And Destin, you're right. It is $10 to apply for a DMP. That's regardless of whether you get one or four. It's just a one. It's just $10. So it's worth applying for all four, even if you don't know where you're going to go. Like sometimes, I mean, at this point, I know where I'm going to go, but sometimes I'll be like, where would I like to go explore? Well, maybe I'll go up the Catskills and try to hunt, and I'll look for a unit up there and apply. So I did that this year, and I didn't get the tag. So maybe don't do that. Any other questions?
Hey Greg, how you doing?
Good.
Um, Thanks for all the information. That was super clear and helpful. I had just kind of a random question. I don't know if other people are like me. They're starting to get a lot of like hunting content on Instagram, and I'm seeing a lot of people who are like making their own bows, which seems really cool. I don't bow hunt, and this is like a just kind of a hypothetical question, but you mentioned that the bow weight is regulated. You have to have a 30-pound draw. So I'm wondering how they do that for like a self-made bow.
So yeah, it's 35 pounds. So just like, I mean, you can take a compound bow and drop it down to below 35 pounds pretty easily. So generally, they sell bow draw scales. It's the thing you hold in your hand, you pull it, and it tells you what the weight is. I would say if you're doing this, if you're building your own bow, or even if you just buy a stick bow, like a traditional archery bow, check it to make sure that it's above 35. And if you
Gotcha.
don't
So,
have one of those scales, I mean, they're pretty cheap. I have one. I think it costs like 20 bucks, but you could also just go into a bow shop and they will definitely have it and can do it for
okay,
you. Yeah.
got it. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yep. And Gloria, yes, the basic hunting license covers all small game, um, with the exception of turkey, which is considered small game, which you do need to get that turkey permit if you want to hunt turkey. Uh, and I guess waterfowl, I would say, is a small game that does have its own special stuff. But um, for the most part, yes, if you're hunting pheasant, squirrel, grouse, um, rabbits, that's all covers your basic license.
Greg, I have a question.
Yeah.
Um, so I applied for 3M, but
Yep.
I applied for both of them 3M, right? So I I didn't get my 1C, so I have to wait till November 1st to get it in person, right?
So I don't know how that's going to work this year. Last year, yes, that would have been the answer. You would go and say, I want 1C. Um, I talked to a DEC person earlier this month who was saying that that's only going to be for lottery units. So I don't know how that would work, but it's also unlimited, so I don't know why they wouldn't just give it to you.
Yeah, so I'm a little confused because I'm like, I don't know if I screwed myself over because now I can't hunt in Long Island
Well, I
earlier than I
mean,
had wanted to.
well, you can because you have your bow tag.
Oh, right. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
and so that's an antlerless tag.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then
Okay,
remember your buck tags now can be used in any season. So
okay,
you could also shoot a buck. And
okay, okay,
if you do shoot a doe or an antlerless tag or an antlerless deer with your bow tag, they will give you a buck tag right away. So
okay,
you'll get a second buck tag. And then
okay.
the other thing you could do is get a muzzleloader privilege, and then you'll get two bow muzzleloader tags, and then you would have two doe tags. So
So, okay, so I can use the bow with the muzzle loader tag.
yep, yep. That's used for both. I mean, they have to be used. I think in Long Island, 1C also it's all considered regular season, so all the tags are available to be used at any point in time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I got all of those. So,
Yeah.
okay, I should be fine then. I don't know why I was stressed.
Yeah, I think they will probably give you that 1C tag because again, it's an unlimited tag, and so but I don't know that for a fact.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll just go into my town hall, I guess, and ask someone.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You could also get someone to transfer you it if you know
Yep.
anyone who has a spare 1C tag.
You can do that as well.
Okay, thank you.
And having multiple 3M tags isn't necessarily a bad thing because um, if you're in a situation where there are two deer that walk into you, you could actually shoot two deer.
Well,
Whereas,
that's why I did that.
yeah, because because they are unlimited, but you have to wait for it to, I mean, theoretically it's instantaneous, but it is like a state-run technology stack. So, it could be, the DEC servers could be down and then it takes them like 8 hours to get another tag to you. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, so that's why I did the both 3M, but then I forgot about 1C, but
yeah,
I like you said, I should be fine with just my other tags.
yeah. A question in the chat. If you did not already, can you run through the transfer system in place this season? You mean transferring DMPs? Who asked that? iPhone? Yes. Okay, Sammy. Um, yeah, so a DMP can be transferred to another hunter. It needs to be, there's like, you literally will see it you can write it over, you can assign it over to them. Last year, as a hunter, you could only have two DMPs transferred to you. This year, it is unlimited. So if you know a whole bunch of people who've got DMPs and they're not using them, they can sign them over to you, and you can do that unlimited. Um, does that answer your question, Sam? I'm gonna assume yes. Okay, sweet. Uh, Anything else? Any other questions?
I got one.
Yeah.
With the earn a second buck. So the bow and muzz tag that we get is limited to those seasons only. Can't be used during the general gun season. The antler tag is open for any season. So then does the earn a second if so I let's say I fill my buck tag, I fill my bow muzz tag or the antler list tag. Does the second buck tag get limited to a certain season or is it open
It's
throughout?
as I understand it, it's similar to the first buck tag, so it can be used in any season. Except for that September season, which is antlerless only. Um, but
Which
yeah,
is
you could
that's
basically go out and hunt that September season, shoot a doe in September. That opens September 12th. You shoot doe September 12th. Now you have two buck tags. You go out October 1st during bow season and shoot two bucks, and that would be legal in this system.
I think the September's only DMP tags, right?
That's correct. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah.
You can't use it then, but you can use it for any other season.
And then,
Yeah.
do you have any recommendations for processors in 3M area?
In which unit?
3M?
I don't. Because I don't tend to drop my deer at a processor, but I think there's I don't know.
The
Does anybody else?
DEC has like a published list of
Yeah,
some by county.
yeah. Um, yeah, I would start there. Or just ask, maybe if you're in our WhatsApp, I don't know, you could ask in there and see if anyone has someone they like in that unit. Um,
I know of one.
there you go.
True Life Taxidermy. I'll get you the phone number. It's 845-733-1313.
I mean, I would encourage you to just process yourself. I think it's fun personally. And you will ultimately you will end up getting more meat back than what you will get from a processor. But understand that that's not always an option for folks. So yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you. Again, I would recommend getting the book. It is exciting reading. A lot of the images I took from this were in the book. So, but it is also on their website in PDF form if that's easier. And I would recommend having this bookmarked on your phone or getting the app so that you can link to it. The number of times I've been like, wait, is it still bear season right now? Can I still hunt bears? What's the rule with that? And then I'm like in a tree stand hunting deer and like I can pull it up and just look. It is better to check in advance as opposed to making a mistake and then, feeling bad about it and having to like call the game warden and tell them you made a mistake. So yeah, definitely recommend having this information. And the other thing I would call out is just I think I said this multiple times, but take your hunter ed, your bow hunter ed if you haven't done it already. It is absolutely worth doing. It's even if you never hunt, it's like it's kind of a fun class. You're going out and learning something that maybe you didn't learn before. And then buying a license, even if you don't hunt, it's $22, but that is $44 worth of conservation dollars that are going to manage our wild places in New York State, and that's actually really cool. Same with the duck stamp. It is a worthwhile thing to purchase. I tend to buy like 2 or 3 of them every use because I feel like I need one for hunting, and I just want to give the money to conservation. And also, it's nice to have one in case I want to take somebody with me who doesn't have it on them. So go out and protect our wild places, even if you're not going to hunt them. All right. If there's no